The Black Templars are one of the hardest hitting melee armies in Warhammer 40k, and for good reason. Units like the Sword Brethren and Grimaldus can melt opposing units, usually within just one phase, with their crazy abilities and buffs. Recently, the Templars welcomed a new detachment to the tabletop called Wrathful Procession. It was a detachment with the vibe of holy warriors chanting litanies of faith while they marched up a battlefield and cut down any heretic in their path. But was this new rule set actually good? Can it compete with Righteous Crusaders? What makes one better than the other? Let's get into it. Welcome back to Starhammer. I main Black Templars, as you all know. So when I saw the detachment for Grotmus, I got pretty excited. I went over it a little on stream, and what I said holds true. It didn't sound bad, at least on paper. Now that I've played a few games with it, I think I can confidently compare it to Righteous Crusaders and point out what's good and what's bad and a little of what's in between. Righteous Crusaders is the default index detachment we have right now. It's pretty cut and dry, letting you choose a Templar vow to buff all your Astartes units for the entire game. You can choose from lethals on all melee attacks, sustain 1 on all melee attacks, anti-psyker 4-up with a 4-up feel no pain from psychic attacks, or a 6-up feel no pain with the leadership of 5-up. All pretty good across the board. Can't really go wrong with any of them besides the anti-psyker one. I don't know a Templar player that uses it because Psychic is just so hard to come by this edition, even for a Psyker army like the Thousand Suns. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to run one of these all game just to counter 1 or 2 dudes. Most of the time, I'm going to be rocking Sustained 1 or Lethals. Either of these works really well, especially with Oath of Moment. With Righteous Crusaders, you're rewarded for running a melee heavy list. That's not to say you can't run one with plenty of guns, but you're going to have way more fun and be much more competitive if you lean into the detachment rule as much as possible. Can't forget about our enhancements, and oh boy, do they enhance. Perdition's Edge improves the AP and strength of the bear's melee by 1. Witch Seeker Bolts is actually incredibly potent against the 1 or 2 psychers you may encounter, as it gives the bear's ranged weapons precision, dev wounds, and anti-psyker 4-up. If you have the anti-psyker vow active, you can also re-roll the hit and roll wounds for ranged attacks made with this enhancement. Sigismund's Seal gives 1 extra attack to the bear's melee weapon, and if lethals is your active vow, 5-up crits, so that's pretty yummy. And Tannhauser's Bones has the damage characteristic of attacks that get through to the bearer, and their unit, a 5-up feel no pain, provided Uphold the Honor of the Emperor is active. The strats in RC are pretty damn good. Fervent Acclamation is a 1 CP strat targeting a character and their unit, and giving them the benefits of another Templar vow in addition to the one you already have active. No Escape is a solid pick for 1 CP that lets you roll to see if you can deny an enemy fallback move, and Vicious Riposte allows you to roll to see if models in a unit can fight upon death. There are a few more, but those are just my favorites. This detachment holds a very special place in my heart because it does a real good job of emulating the zealous fury that Black Templars are known for. It's also just a ton of fun. I mean, seriously, what's better than swinging on a unit with every member of a Primaris Crusader squad with all chain swords, which is about 20 attacks if everyone is running one, and a 5 initiate for a neophyte squad, combined with Sustained 1, while burning a CP for Fervent Acclamation to get lethals on top of it. You can stack Crusader's Wrath on there for another CP and give an extra AP and 1 to Strength if you're running lethals on the vow. Combos like this make Templars a whirlwind of death on the board. Even with holding any unit abilities like the Chaplain's +1 to wound, units like PCS and Sword Bros are downright scary to go up against on their own. But as much as I sing the praises for melee heavy RC builds, it does have one glaring weakness, and that is speed. This can be offset by taking transports, but besides the PCS able to reroll charges and advances, your options for fast movement are pretty limited by default. You also have to eat more into your points budget to run a transport or 2 in order to get your guys up the field quickly. Slow and steady does win the race a lot of the time. I mean, just look at Custodes. It's the same philosophy, they just hit a lot harder. But what about if we want to go fast without taking chunks out of our points budget? Well, that's where Wrathful Procession comes into play. This detachment conjures images of Black Templars charging across the war zone, chanting litanies of wrath as they march against impossible odds. Speaking of litanies, our detachment ability this time lets us pick 1 of 3 litanies to chant while we make our way up the board. Sort of like Gladius Task Force, except we can just use whichever one of these we want as many times as we want. World leaders might be shadowboxing in the corner, but we're going to be trying out for the next American Idol. Chorus of Relentless Hate adds 2 inches to your movement with a +1 to advance. Rite of Perfervid Wrath gives melee weapons a +1 to strength, and Chant of Deathless Devotion gives your boys a 5-up invuln against ranged attacks. You pick one of these and it lasts until your next command phase. Enhancements in this detachment are pretty solid as well. Pyroban gives a unit stealth, although I don't really think that's worth it for 25 points. Sacred Rage is 30 points for a once per battle fight's first ability. This can really come in clutch, providing your timing is solid. Terramon's Censor forces enemy units within engagement range of the bearer to take a battle shock test at a -1 penalty. This can be really nifty when you want to keep someone like a Necron player from reanimating on the spot. Finally, we have Benediction of Fury, that's reserved for a Chaplain, giving him dev wounds on melee attacks. Strats are not bad. Fueled by Wrath is okay, I guess. For 1 CP in any phase, you can give your unit a 5 of Feel No Pain against mortals. I think I've only used this once or twice, as it's very circumstantial. Could save your ass against a grenade stratagem or something like being charged by jump back intercessors, but I haven't found myself leaning into this very much. Brute Fervor is actually really solid for 1 CP, allowing your boys to reroll hit rolls of 1 and ignore any modifiers to hit or wound in the fight phase. This one is actually super handy against a Chronomancer unit or something along those lines that dishes out roll modifiers. Relentless Momentum is another 1 CP strat, extending your fight range to out to 3 inches. This is fantastic to use in a Primaris Crusader squad to make sure all 10 dudes can swing on one target. Really handy for helping you get more hits in with larger bricks on a target. Castigate the Demagogues just gives your melee weapons precision. It's okay, I guess, but also pretty circumstantial, and I found myself not benefiting from it very much because a lot of the characters my guys go up against have a 4-up invuln save anyway. Against characters that don't have that though, it's alright. Lastly, Voice of Devotion is out here for 1 CP, letting you turn on a different litany instead of the one you currently have active until the end of the phase. But how does it stack up against Righteous Crusaders? Wrathful Procession gives Templars a much needed mobility boost. I found using the movement buff when I go second is often the best play since it allows me to storm the middle of the board very quickly. Movement can make or break a game in 40k. 2 inches doesn't sound like a lot, size doesn't matter. But with most of your infantry moving at 8 inches plus a max advance roll on top of that, you can get to 15 inches or about fairly easily. I've been using this one like crazy on units like Hellblasters or Intercessors that can storm position and soften it up for melee units, and boy howdy does it work. That's probably my favorite aspect of this new detachment. You can get in someone's face really quick. Makes you a lot less likely to miss charges too. I found myself sticking with this one most of the game, with the exception of turns I had most of my units engaged on in the start. Then I'd give that +1 to strength. And let's talk about that for a second. That +1 to strength also does wonders, especially if you're able to stack it on a unit that also adds a buff to strength like Helbrecht. Sticking with that example, I got him up to strength 10 on his two-handed attack due to that litany and his +1 to strength from leading a unit. Random with Sword Bros and their ability to add +1 damage during the fight phase gets Helbrecht up to 4 damage per attack. As the cherry on top, I tagged him with Brute Fervor on non-oath targets to have rerolls of 1 as well. With that combo, Helbrecht turns into a freak in nature that'll mop the floor with almost anything. It also helps out a lot with chainswords, as strength 5 can help you get that more likely wound roll at a 3-up against most other Space Marines, or a 4-up against slightly tougher models like Botan or Terminators. Wrathful Procession isn't as killy as Righteous Crusaders. It can certainly be in instances, but the consistency of the lethality is debatable. The reason the consistency is questionable isn't because of the lack of lethals or sustained or whatever, but due to the stratagems. Half of Wrathful strats are circumstantial. I guess you could argue that it's better to have and not need, but when comparing it to RC ones that let you fight on death and stack detachment bonuses and shit like that, Wrathful Procession comes up kind of short. That's not to say that Wrathful is ass and RC isn't, but it's really going to come down to how you want to play. If you want to be more lethal, go Righteous Crusaders. If you want to be quicker and only hit as hard sometimes, go Wrathful Procession. I'd also run Wrathful with more ranged units. I'll drop the last list I used for this detachment down below, so you can playtest it for yourself. Report back and validate me afterwards. Wrathful does make me a bit more cautious in melee though. Without the volume of attacks or lethals you usually get from RC, you have to pick your battles a little more carefully. I compare it as Wrathful being more of a scalpel and Righteous being more of a Warhammer.
He's in, boys! He did it! He said it!
Procession does feel great to play, and dare I say, more casual. So, if you want a game that lets you crusade, but faster, Wrathful Procession is going to be the detachment for you. Give these new rules a shot, think you're going to like it just as much as I did. And that's it for this one, y'all. It's not really all that deep, but I wanted to share my experiences and push back against a lot of the doom speak I saw about this detachment when it first dropped. What are your experiences with Wrathful Procession? I hope you had just as much fun with it as I did. Let me know in the comments. As always, links to the socials and 3D models are in the description. Drop a like if you like it, a subscribe if you really liked it, and don't forget to check that community tab for shitposts and shenanigans. I'll see you all in the next one. Toodles.